Hey everyone, welcome to TechStrong TV. Today's Monday, November 16th. We are halfway through November. Boggles my mind. It's crazy how fast time goes, especially when you can't even go anywhere with all of this COVID news. You know, the news continues to be pretty bleak on the numbers here and people dying and sick in hospitals. And you've heard it from people other than me. Wear a mask, man. Keep socially distanced. Wash your hands. I know Thanksgiving's coming and we want to see our families. But, you know, we could see light at the end of the tunnel. We need to hang in here another couple months and hopefully put this in the rearview mirror. I hope so. Anyway, we've got a great TechStrong show for you today. Keep you occupied with what's going on in the worlds of digital transformation, DevOps, cybersecurity, and cloud native. Let me tell you a little bit about who we have on for today. Number one, I have Don Foster, who's been with Commvault for 18 years. Don's a VP at Commvault. Of course, Commvault's a pretty well-known company, security, infrastructure. Commvault recently came out with some news around, you know, the trends they're seeing around Kubernetes and cloud and digital transformation, you know, gaining momentum. And we're going to talk to Don about that and what Commvault is doing about it or around it. So that should be a good interview. And then I'm really happy to be joined by Chris Ford, who's a VP over at ThreatStack. And Chris is going to talk to us a little bit about machine learning and security and how we're, you know, we in some ways, depending how you measure, you know, it's making a difference. And machine learning is here to stay, especially as part of cybersecurity. After that, we have two interviews from All Day in regard to All Day DevOps. Of course, All Day DevOps was last week. It was the 5th year of All Day DevOps, another great show. I forget if it was 120 speakers. Excuse me, something like that. But you can, I think, already see some of the stuff from last week over at All Day DevOps. These two interviews are with Mooksoft CEO Phil T. and with Sonatype's Michelle Duffy. So please go check, we'll have them both up here for you to check out. After that, we have, it's Monday, so we have a Cyber Hero Adventures episode with the one and only Gary Berman. Gary's guest today, Kevin Tierney, VP Global Cybersecurity at General Motors. So Gary's doing good stuff there, and this should be a really good show. Next up, we're going to turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our Chief Content Officer and Managing Editor. Charlene has the news around the Media Ops websites today, as well as a great preview of some exciting webinars. We have some really good webinars this week. I'm looking forward to them. And Charlene also has an interview with Ian Pitt of LogMeIn. He's the SVP and CIO there. And they've recently come out with their State of IT in a Remote World study. So that should be a good one. At that point, we'll turn things over to Mitchell in the Analyst Corner. And Mitchell has a good interview with Nana Ben-Dov of YL Ventures. YL Ventures is really an interesting company. They kind of led the wave of venture capitalists investing in Israeli companies very early on, and then helping them as they grow and sort of migrate, or at least sales, management. A lot of times R&D stay back in, and engineering stay back in Israel, but some of the company moves to the U.S., and they've had a lot of success with that. They have their CISO quarterly circuit report out, and Mitchell speaks, as I mentioned, to Nama Ben-Dov on that. So that should be a good one. And then I'll be back to close things up. We've got about 2.5 hours worth of material for you today. We think it's a really worthwhile 2.5 hours. Watch it intently, play it in the background, rewind it, stop it, whatever you need. But we're here to keep you informed, keep you up to date, help pass the time, as we all have lots of work to do. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with our first guest. So, you know, when companies like Commvault are putting out news and releasing information about their plans around things like Kubernetes and an increased emphasis on cloud and digital transformation, that stuff's getting real. And Don Foster, my next guest, is a VP at Commvault who's been there 18 years. And Don is going to talk to us about some recent news from Commvault as they see these trends accelerating and how they're going to help their customer base leverage them. So here's Don Foster from Commvault.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on another segment for TechStrong TV. My guest this segment is Don Foster of Commvault. Hey Don, welcome to TechStrong.
Hey, thanks Alan. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you on board here with us. Don, if you wouldn't mind, give us a little bit of your background, a little bit about Commvault. I think most of our audience has heard of Commvault, certainly, but they may not know a lot about it, or maybe they think they do. Give us your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, my name is Don Foster. I'm our Global Vice President for our sales engineering team. So essentially strategy, how we take our products to market, talk with customers and help highlight our value, right? My history, I've been, believe it or not, with the company for quite a long time. It'll be 18 years this January, in a number of different roles, from marketing and product management, as well as being in the field as an SE as well, talking to customers about some of their challenges. From a Commvault background perspective, I think, like you said, most everyone knows us for sort of where our roots came from as a data protection company. We've been working quickly to modernize and really help adapt to new technology workloads. But really what we found has become really interesting, especially probably for the audience that's with us today, is how we can help speed sort of the usage of data, maybe speed the creation of new modern applications attached to new application environments. Obviously Kubernetes is fairly hot. And to really just simplify some of the processes that come in creating and modernizing applications. So we continue to do that core business of data protection and disaster recovery and maintaining really solid coverage and helping customers be ready. But really the new parts of our business are about helping to extend that data for other usage use cases.
Sure is. So, Don, in other years, right, not 2020, we'd have a great conversation here. We're coming up on Thanksgiving in a few weeks, and we'd be talking about, what kind of lessons we've learned this year, what we see coming forward in the future. And of course, we're still going to have those conversations, but any of those conversations today are kind of, there's an elephant in the room of what's gone on with COVID and
the pandemic,
the fact, yes, we're sitting here looking in on your house, and instead of an office, and you haven't traveled, I'm sure, in some time. So let's talk about that. What has been the impact, you think? I mean, it's an unusual year, to say the least. What kind of lessons has Commvault learned? How do you think it's kind of changing what we see coming down the pike?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. I remember when we first kicked in, one of the things that we realized is, okay, it might be challenging for us, but for our customers especially, this is super challenging times. So we definitely put in extra hours to ensure that we were there for our customers. We even extended a couple of offers for customers and just how we can ensure that they're being protected and try to make their sort of entrance into the new normal, which now almost seems normal because we've been in it for so long, as simplified as possible. But I think what was probably the most interesting twist that came out of this, and I definitely didn't expect it to happen. And of course, hindsight's 2020. So looking backwards and starting to do some of these conversations and surveys and what have you, you start to realize that the unexpected outcome of what this pandemic has done, especially for IT folks, is it's really accelerated that digital transformation journey. I remember going back and talking with a number of industry experts back in like 2019, 2018 timeframes. And it was, 2025, 2026, we think that will really be the timeframe when we'll see a fair amount of acceleration in digital transformation because there's all these technologies coming, Kubernetes being one of them, seeing cloud mature, all the different cloud native services. And what's really happened was the moment we were all put to work from home, enterprises everywhere, small businesses everywhere started to turn to all the different service providers, all the different as a service offerings, different cloud providers, and start figuring out how do we digitize and help kind of get out of the business of building IT and starting to get these outcomes in. And together with that came this massive application modernization push, because in order to be competitive in the pandemic world, you have to be able to reach who your customer is remotely. And not everybody was set up for that. So there was this massive acceleration that occurred, and customer meetings that we are getting involved in was, okay, by the end of this year, right, if this pandemic is still around, we have these sort of marks that we have to achieve that are about moving to cloud or getting out of the on-premises game, helping to drive more automation. And it was interesting, I read an article that interviewed 1,000 CEOs, and they said the pandemic, 89% of them said the pandemic has seen the digital transformation absolutely accelerate, and it's not going away. So that consolidation was just a really interesting sort of, impact of what the pandemic brought.
Absolutely. There's a theory in physics that you can't travel backwards in time, right? Time, it's just an arrow pointing, this way. You can't go back in time. And I think there's a similar theory in the use of technology, is that, once the genie's out of the bottle, you don't put it back. So all of this digital transformation, all of this progress, if we can call it progress, that's been made over the last year, it's not going to go away because a vaccine for COVID comes out or something like that, right? These are investments already made that have been made. And look, I miss traveling. I miss a lot of things about this situation. But I do love a lot about how we can do anything online now, right? I mean, I haven't been in a supermarket in months, right? I haven't been, but yet, I'm constantly amazed, not every week, when I have to take the recycling out, how many Amazon boxes there are and so forth, right?
Yeah, I talk with my kids and I always tell them, would you ever expected that if you needed something in 2 hours, Amazon would have it at your doorstep, 10 years ago? And my daughter's like, mind blown.
All of but you know what? So here's the thing. Kids, they're digital natives. They're I don't know, my kids are a little older maybe than your kids, but you know what? These kids are growing up expecting that. To us, it's like, wow, this is crazy, but it's not going away, number one. Number two, though, it's also created some challenges, right? Because all this transformation, let's be real, it's not done. It's not done without a lot of hard work. It's not done without a lot of, pushing rope uphill a little bit. There's security concerns. There's what technology should I use concerns. Who do I partner with concerns, right?
Well, and bringing up Kubernetes, for example, right? It's been the hot buzz term for like the last 5 years. It really has. And it's really grown in the last 24 months. And then in the last 8 to 9 months, we've seen a massive number of projects really start to drive this whole application modernization push. But here's the funny thing, is we're just now getting into persistent storage and the ability to think about how we're actually keeping data persistent along with the ephemeral applications that tie it together. There's a lot more complexity with that. And we're still defining what the standards are for what the next gen application needs to be, right? So to your point, I mean, we're going to stub our toe. We're going to hopefully fail fast, turn really quick, make amends, figure out how to make it work. And I mean, ultimately, that's also where Commvault wants to be, not only for the traditional IT, but also for the new application developers, the application modernization folks, is to help deliver those solutions that can help them quickly pivot, scale for the enterprise, and also kind of map out across all the different environments they're trying to leverage.
Yeah, no, I for sure. I know you guys recently kind of were making some announcements around this, right? So what I don't want to get you in trouble, but what specifically, or any kind of ideas can you tell us about what's Commvault doing to help people with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, about 5 months ago, actually, so I'll back the story up a little bit. Basically, a year and 2 months ago, we acquired a company by the name of Hedvig. Hedvig is a software-defined storage company. Upon acquiring them, one of the main reasons we did it was because of some of the native container interface, container storage that could provide in that software-defined platform. It works across multiple clouds, on-premises, et cetera. In the past summer, we released a whole new slew of CRDs, basically custom resource developments or resources for the Kubernetes ecosystem. What that basically meant was the typical sort of storage technologies that you would expect from your storage arrays. We made that programmable objects, pieces that you can define and execute against with Kubernetes and containers in general. So that spans into the cloud. It gives customers the ability to really manage their DevOps organization in a really interesting way, in which they can synchronize workloads and different persistent volumes from, say, Amazon to on-prem back to Azure, or a whole mix of multi-cloud scenarios. Because we all know development worlds we live in today, there's never one development cluster, right? There's probably hundreds of them that are spread across the globe from where we work from. So that was one interesting piece leading up to where we are now. Where we're going, we've just added in support from a data protection perspective for Kubernetes apps. So discovering what lives inside of those clusters. You'll hear a lot about that here at KubeCon on how we're discovering the actual persistent volumes, protecting those volumes, discovering the manifest, all the YAML configurations, the secrets, protecting all of that, much like your traditional IT would require, but providing that level of governance, security, and control that these new applications require. And then the other interesting thing is we have a SaaS product for customers called Metallic, and there's a really interesting piece of news coming out that will surround containers, and I won't go too far on it, but basically giving you the ability for that sort of protection through a SaaS environment. So some really interesting things that we're doing to give customers options, but then also give them prescriptive solutions to help meet those end needs.
Excellent. You know what strikes me is, as much as things change, some stuff stays the same, which is we may change to a Kubernetes, deployment infrastructure and everything, but things like governance and security, compliance, auditable, monitorable type of, processes, you still need them.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And so, and then there are, of course, some people, Don, who say, well, look, what we did in the cloud, Kubernetes in cloud too, we already got it covered. But no, you need at the very least tweaks, if not outright, as you guys went out and bought a company that kind of had native Kubernetes interfaces and stuff, right? You can't just, I forgot what the term was, but like cloud, shift and lift.
Yeah.
That I think that's the term, shift and lift.
Lift and shift, or shift and lift.
Lift and shift. It doesn't always work so good when you're dealing with this stuff.
Right. And actually, when you think about the lift and shift idea, most customers, so Kubernetes is and the container ecosystem is kind of like the next version of virtualization, right?
Yeah.
First it was on-prem virtualization, then you had cloud native virtualization, and now we have this sort of really ultralight application virtualization platform. And what we've learned from the previous is lifting and shifting, or basically re-platforming or re-hosting workloads and just into another environment isn't always the most efficient way, right?
Yeah.
Pick up and drop it down, then before you realize, wow, either it cost me a lot of money or it doesn't quite work the way I thought it should within the ecosystem. And so then you think about refactoring, but then ultimately you get to this point where you actually just want to re-architect, because the technology becomes so mature and can allow you to do things that are so different that it's about re-architecting some of these older school platforms, ideas, applications, whatever it might be, and doing that in the new. And it's funny you said, the more things change, the more they stay the same. IBM did some research, and get this stat. This one blew my mind, and this is one I talk to customers about when we talk about security, right? In the year 2020, from Q1 to Q2, the number of ransomware attacks increased by 300%.
Yep.
From quarter to quarter in the same year. Talk about an impact that a pandemic has, not only for an on-premise IT, but just in IT in general for security. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, last week we do a reoccurring video series called CSO Talk, and we always have CSOs, and we had a woman from the IBM X-Force, and I can't remember her name this second, but we were talking about this I mean, forget Q1 to Q2. I'm talking about right now. React, I forgot how you pronounce it, RYAK, whatever.
Yeah.
This new ransomware, React, they targeted a couple of hundred, mid-sized health hospitals in the U.S. Some people are saying it's nation state behind it or what have you, but the bottom line is that these bad guys, these criminals, they don't miss an opportunity to miss a good crisis, right?
That's right.
You got to ask yourself, what kind of human would attack a hospital in the middle of all that's going on? But that's a story for another day. And here's another instance, though, Don, to get us on a more positive note. Another instance of the more things change, the more they stay the same is we're starting to see people host Kubernetes back at their own data center on bare metal, not even in the, so they have these hybrid developments where I've got Kubernetes on my prem and in a cloud environment, and I want to manage them all together. So, these things don't die. They don't even fade away, frankly, right? We just recycle and keep doing it.
Yeah, and a lot of our partners like VMware and IBM and others are putting lots of effort in developing the on-premises capability for Kubernetes, right?
Sure.
And I mean, we get it. Going back to your first point of governance and compliance and security, if your data is your crown jewels and there's sensitive data that's stored within some of these applications and you're constantly doing development work, and we all know from research in the past that most ransomware attacks and security breaches occur in the dev environments, where the rigor of security isn't quite as strong. It probably makes sense to do a little bit more of that work when you're dealing with more sensitive data or the crown jewels of your business, to do it on premises. And so, I mean, I think we're going to always see this hosted, not hosted, back and forth sort of scenario through IT. I think we'll see it blend more towards cloud as time progresses, but I don't think the on-premises infrastructure is going to ever fully go away.
No, I agree with not in the next 20 years or whatever. Anyway, who knows? Who knows what technology does in 5 years? But yeah, I agree. Exactly. I was just going to say that to you. But forget 5 years. Let's talk about 2021. Let's we got some good news last week on preliminary results anyway on this vaccine and the vaccines we're working on. Let's hope this time next year, 2021, it's in the rearview mirror.
Absolutely.
What do you see from Commvault in the market a year out from now, even, Don?
Yeah, so let's start with the market first, because I'm sure as much as everyone wants to hear about Commvault, I think the market's more interesting. And actually,
maybe.
What's that?
I said maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, right? So I think one of the interesting things that's going to happen here, whether it's in March or June, when that light at the end of the tunnel isn't the train running us over, but truly us getting out of the pandemic, right? I think one of the most interesting things that we're going to see happen very quickly, and I'm sure much of your audience probably agrees with this already, and that is the folks that are driving the application modernization efforts, sort of the app dev, the DevOps leaders. They are really going to become the new power brokers from an IT perspective. Because they really are the glue that is helping to understand what the business is trying to achieve and how that can then functionally tie back into the actual technologies that are in their toolbox, right, for achieving that and doing it at scale. So I really see, that community starting to reshape the ideas of what IT infrastructure is, how it functions, how it's being developed and executed against. And with that, I think 2021, I'm sure you've probably heard this from a number of folks, but I do think it will be the year that Kubernetes really starts to go more mainstream from an application perspective. It won't just be the ephemeral applications that help drive some web applications and what have you, but really start to be ingrained for scale, for the agility and breadth and how they can operate. And I think we're going to start seeing real edge computing use cases too.
Oh yeah.
Edge is not laptops and desktops, right? Edge is about having that compute center on a cell phone tower and what that means and how you manage that information and that data. I think 5G is going to really help us sort of change the way we're collecting information, which Security is not going to go away, right? That's still going to be a huge
No.
concern. But man, the things we can do with this data is going to be really, really interesting. And I think 2021, once we get out of that pandemic, will be a big eye opener for us all.
I think what's going to be interesting is, first of all, we're going to need to wrap our heads around what it means to have those kind of resources at the edge.
Oh, yeah.
Then we're going to have to kind of normalize edge to core again, which was something, again, what's old is new. Something we were doing a long time ago. But, we're going to have to normalize what should stay at the edge versus what stays in core, to the endpoints. And so I think that's a big thing. I think the other thing in terms of Kubernetes adoption is, look, if you're lucky enough to play in a green field, right? Don't have an application that I have to migrate. I don't have, right? I'm starting from scratch on a green field on a plain blank piece of paper. Kubernetes is already a dominant player in that green field.
Absolutely.
The world's not, unfortunately, the world's not a green field. The world's a brown field, right? There's already tons and millions and more applications that have already been up and running, whether in cloud, on-prem, both, or whatever. I think when we talk about Kubernetes being dominant, it's the migration of those apps, right? And that's going to take the kind of stuff you're working on at Commvault, really, in terms of, it's great when I have a blank piece of paper to start on, but we always don't start on a blank piece of paper.
That's right. Yeah, the old adage, can we just wipe the slate clean? And look, there's no way just to wipe the slate clean.
I'd love to, but life don't work like that, man. Yeah. Anyway, Don, we're way over time here. I apologize. But for people who want to get more information about Commvault, what you guys are doing around Kube and some of the new stuff, where can they go?
Yeah, so if you want, absolutely check us out at KubeCon. If you're going to be there, you're going to partake in part of that. We're going to have it's going to be our first year of really being solid from a presence perspective at KubeCon. There's a session with myself and a gentleman, Nigel Polton, who's also in the Kubernetes space. Plus, we have a lot of materials and details talking about our solutions there. Outside of that, Commvault.com, our website, has a fair number of resources, both from our software-defined storage perspective and what we're doing on the data management side for Kubernetes. And then also check out Metallic.io. The announcements we're going to be making around Metallic are going to be really interesting with Kubernetes and hybrid cloud when it comes to SaaS offerings. So check all those things out. But I think I'd say KubeCon is probably the best place to start.
Absolutely. I mean, so KubeCon's been one of my favorite events to go to for the last couple of years. Of course, being virtual this year, it's still cool, but I miss going to KubeCon. Maybe I'll see you when we start doing them in person, maybe a year from now. Who knows?
Hopefully.
Anyway, hey, exactly. Hey, thanks for joining us on TechStrong TV. Good luck at KubeCon. Good luck with what's going on here in Commvault. Come back and visit us again.
Would love to, Alan. Thank you for the time.
All righty. Don Forster from Commvault here on TechStrong TV. We're going to take a quick break and be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
So the ML genie is out of the bottle, especially as it relates to cybersecurity. And though some, doom and gloom say AI is going to not be what it is, and others, poo-poo ML, it's having a tremendous effect, especially in cybersecurity. ML is. Chris Ford, VP at ThreatStack, is going to tell us about that, how ThreatStack is harnessing that to help their customer base, and what we can expect going forward. They recently made an announcement around this. Chris Ford, VP of ThreatStack, is going to tell us all about it.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on another segment of TechStrong TV. Our guest this segment is Chris Ford of ThreatStack. Hey, Chris, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hey, Alan. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, we're happy to have you here, actually. But Chris, you know what? Let's start with this. Give our audience a little bit of your own personal background and maybe a little background on ThreatStack. I think most of the audience is familiar, but well, with ThreatStack, maybe not with Chris Ford. But why not, just in case they're not, why don't we include both?
Sure thing. Well, let me start with ThreatStack. ThreatStack is in the security and compliance business, largely focused on helping our customers demonstrate compliance with various frameworks or industry standards to their customers around cloud infrastructure. Think PCI DSS, HIPAA, SOC 2 Type 2 is very popular. We also help our customers detect threats in cloud infrastructure and applications. So when you think ThreatStack, think compliance and security for cloud workloads, whether they're running on-prem in a hybrid cloud environment or 100% in public cloud. I've been with ThreatStack now for just about 3 years. My background is in enterprise security for the past at least 15 years. It's been quite a ride.
Yeah, it has. I've been in enterprise security a little longer than that, but it's amazing how the security industry has kind of, I would use the word matured, and I guess matured is a word we could use. Mm-hmm. It's morphed as well, though. I mean, the mission, though the core mission maybe stays the same, the missions that we all do, I think maybe have changed a little bit. The technology certainly has. I think I would say the biggest change, though, is that we don't just toil away in some dark basement, dark room, without, we're plainly in the light of day now. And for the most part, people know security is important, and we try more than ever to integrate in with, IT in general and the business.
Sure.
Yep. One of the big changes, though, Chris, in terms of security, has been, like everything else, we've seen a big data explosion in security, where whether it be log files or any other data we gather, you could drown in the data, and so we've applied machine learning. Sometimes people call it AI, but machine learning. Right? There's a difference, but we've applied machine learning to a lot of these security challenges, and they've resulted in some success. Yeah, right? The bad thing about security is you don't hear about the attacks you prevented. You only hear about the attacks that succeeded or the incidents. But that being said, we've made progress on that. I know ThreatStack recently came out with an announcement around some new machine learning capabilities that you guys are harnessing. Why don't you tell our audience about it?
Sure thing. Well, it's funny you mentioned security professionals sitting in a basement somewhere. We really have dragged security out into the light, and it is much more data centric. In fact, it feels really now that cybersecurity is increasingly about collection and normalization of tons of data for things like analytics and machine learning at scale. The advent of public cloud has really changed how we have to think about security. It has made infrastructure increasingly layered and complex, so there's lots more data to deal with. There's lots more threat surface, and it requires a very tight collaboration between operations and security practitioners. And so ThreatStack, for the last 6 years, has been investing in data collection, data normalization, and modeling at scale. Just to give you a feeling for it, we collect anywhere between 50 to 60 billion events per day from our customer infrastructure. That's a lot of data. And one of the challenges that our customers are facing is that this infrastructure that's changing very rapidly. So it's both ephemeral and there are tons of new technologies being brought to bear. Think containers, Kubernetes, serverless. So there's lots of additional threat surface, lots of additional data, and smaller security teams to handle all this telemetry that's flowing in. And so Threat Stack, for us, it was the very obvious next step. We've spent all this time gathering, normalizing, and modeling data. Now we're applying machine learning onto the event stream that we collect. This is called ThreatML. And ThreatML is going forward a very substantial part of our technology and the services that we offer to our customers, in that it helps, number one, to adapt as infrastructure changes. And machine learning is particularly good at that, updating models as behaviors change. It also is helping to automate tasks that are human intensive, right? Triaging alerts or findings from your security tool, investigating those alerts using machine generated context, and even getting predictive about potential risk. That's where the value of machine learning fits into this flood of data and these security teams that are unable to keep up for the most part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is my own personal observation, so I'm not, let me caveat it by saying that. I think one of the things that we've seen happening, right? I was okay, it's this mousetrap thing. And so we've increased the amount of data that we were able to have access to try to sharpen our security postures and be better about security. Then we come, okay, so now it becomes a big data issue. We're drowning in data. And we get technologies like machine learning, right? That can kind of learn from, spot patterns in the data and bring it to our attention so that we can have, act on it. But those patterns are only as good as like the instructions that we give it, right? I mean, patterns for pattern's sake alone isn't helping us. So do we ever get the human out of that equation somehow? Because, I think you need a human there, but yet when we start talking about really big data and we start talking about the speed of business today, the human in the middle becomes the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that banging like that. What do you think, Chris?
It's an interesting paradox, right? Because machine learning is intended to automate things that take people lots of time.
Yep.
But we are firm believers at Threat Stack that you can't ever remove the human from the loop. And there's a variety of places where people still are very important to the process. Even before you start using machine learning, human expertise are absolutely required when you're doing things like feature engineering for machine learning. A cloud security expert has to be able to say, these fields, these features are important for me upstream. The last thing you want to do is spend a lot of CPU and dollars of a security tool to tell people what's important and what matters. A lot of tools that are out there in the market today make decisions about what data to surface to you. And I think that's a mistake because you're sacrificing detection for reduced findings. I think people do need to review the findings from a security tool and then coach it so that the findings can get more relevant over time. You need, especially in this world of heterogeneous cloud infrastructure, one organization is very different from another. The behaviors that are meaningful to them are different. One organization may be very against having logins to cloud infrastructure. Another organization may be perfectly okay with that. You need humans to be able to bring the context from their respective organization into the models so that the findings are relevant to them. And so you really do need people to interpret what security tools are telling you. Ultimately, I think the goal is to automate those sorts of decisions or support those decisions in a way that people can then focus on much higher value activities like threat hunting, rather than being in the weeds on alert triage and investigations. But yeah, you absolutely need people with expertise in both cloud native infrastructure and security to be able to make these tools effective.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that I think has changed, Chris, is what skill sets are needed, in a security researcher today, a security analyst today, right? When I was more involved day to day, in security, you didn't really need to have developer skills. Maybe you needed a little PHP or something, but you didn't need developer skills. You didn't really need, look, most of the security folks I knew back then were network folks who got sucked into it somehow, right? We didn't have the professional cybersecurity guy who went, they didn't even call it cybersecurity, it was InfoSec. But they didn't go to school for it. Maybe they took some SANS classes or something. Today's security person, I imagine a threat stack, as you say, needs to have a really good grounding in cloud native architecture, cloud native technologies, right? How modern apps work, and where the skeletons are buried there, in order to do a good job.
For sure. One of the things that always jumps out to me is that if you want to have effective security in this cloud native, container native world, you need to understand how DevOps teams work and how they deploy software so that you can reduce the friction that's involved with inserting security. Ultimately, the last thing you want to do is affect the velocity at which your development team is working. That's really the whole point behind DevOps and modern CI/CD. But you mentioned developer skills, and I think that's also important. We've got a team of security analysts at ThreatStack that are writing code to interpret the output of our platform. They use Jupyter notebooks to do deep investigations and look for anomalies in customer data for threat hunting. So you're right. Security practitioners have to be comfortable with cloud native infrastructure, but they also have to write a bit of code as well to help do something meaningful with the results.
Absolutely. So I wanted to explore another thing with you. The other day, my internet at home went out, and I had to call their tech support from the provider. And when I heard the dog barking, it became obvious to me that the service tech I was help desk tech I was on the phone with was working from home.
Yeah.
Let's say a dog's in the office, but I'm pretty sure he was working from home. And then we diagnosed the issue. He had me play with our fiber box and everything, and it bad fiber. It looks like a break in the fiber. And he said, "All right, let me get someone scheduled out there. Let me, And he literally had to pick up the phone, another phone, and dial into a scheduling office, dispatch, and all of that. And not that wouldn't happen if he was at a SOC or a NOC or a center, but the fact that he was remote, but you know what, it really didn't miss a beat. He didn't miss a beat. Wondering at ThreatStack what you guys are seeing there with people working remote. ML certainly helps that kind of stuff, I think, but how has it affected your, delivery, if you will?
It sure has affected in many ways a positive way.
Really?
I assume you're referring to the pandemic in particular.
Yeah.
Forcing a lot of people to work from home. First of all, our hearts go out to everybody who's been impacted by the pandemic. All of our infrastructure runs in public cloud, so for us it was a very simple transition. And like most companies, today who are impacted by COVID, we've had to adjust and adapt. We've seen it as really an opportunity to go innovate rather than use it as an excuse. So we've been really focused on delivering innovations and value to our customers. But I will say that this whole work from home model, as businesses are getting more and more comfortable with it, we really expect to see an uptick in adoption of cloud. And in general, that's very good for ThreatStack. It in many ways has hastened, I think, the migration to public cloud. And I think that's a really good thing.
Absolutely. So let's hope we get past this COVID thing sooner than later, the pandemic. And, people, whether they go back to work or they work from their houses, it's not important right now for the purposes of our question. Chris, where do you think ML continues to evolve here? How do you, are we seeing as good as it gets, or are there large gains to be made?
There's a huge amount of opportunity around machine learning, I think. There are some pitfalls to avoid with machine learning. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a silver bullet for all of your cloud security needs. You still need humans in the loop. You still need signature or rule-based detection to find known patterns in data that are meaningful to you. But machine learning certainly should be a prominent tool in your toolbox. And today, I think machine learning is being used an awful lot for anomaly detection, which it should be. But if I think about the analytics value chain, as it were, at the bottom of the stack, you've got hindsight, which is what happened. That's detection. Kind of tell me about the behaviors of interest. As you move up the chain, then you get to insight, and that's why did it happen? So that's context, machine-generated context that can help with decision support in critical tasks and incident response. So you'll see movement from detection to context and insights from the data, machine learning playing a big role there. But as you move up the value chain even higher, then you're looking at moving from hindsight to insight to foresight. You want to get predictive about risk. And the best thing that we can do for security teams, I think now, is help them get out of the reactive mode and help them begin to predict risk so that they can get ahead of it. And I think machine learning shows the biggest promise in those areas. Help me understand why something is happening. Give me the context to act on it, and then help me understand where my biggest areas of risk are and help me predict risk so I can help my teams get ahead of it.
Yeah, I don't disagree there at all. Chris, I just want to make sure we covered everything on the release with ML. For people who maybe, though, want to grab more information about this and do a deeper dive, where can they go? What can they see, read?
Well, first stop should be www.threatstack.com. We are super excited about what we've announced to market. We think it's a game changer for cloud security. We'll be doing a series of webinars where we talk about the technology in more detail. Yours truly will be hosting. We have several scheduled for December, so look them up on the website and we'll talk more about it in detail.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Good luck. All righty. Stay safe and stay well. Chris Ford, VP ThreatStack here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back with our next guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
So my friends Derek Weeks and Mark Miller have been putting on All Day DevOps now for 5 years. It's grown from, a little bit of an idea to probably the biggest online DevOps conference in the world. They had over, I think it was 120, but maybe it was 180. I think 120 speakers this year. It just happened last week. I think you can go see the recordings already. We had a whole bunch of interviews we had done for All Day DevOps, and we want to get them all out there. So I want to provide two more to you today. One is with our friend Phil T., who's the CEO of Moogsoft, and we've interviewed Phil a bunch of times here, but this is a good interview with Phil T. with Mark Miller. And then we also have from Sonatype themselves, Michelle Duffy, and we have her interview as well. I think you'll like it. So here are two good interviews about the recent All Day DevOps.
All right, Mark Miller here, co-founder of All Day DevOps. I'm here with one of our major sponsors, Phil T. from Moogsoft. Phil, thanks so much for helping us out this year.
It's my pleasure, and we're very excited by what you're up to at All Day DevOps, and we want to play as much of a role of it as we can.
For people who haven't heard of Moogsoft before, give us like the 30,000-foot view.
Well, apart from having actually it's that way, isn't it? Because I'm in reverse. A very friendly cow in our logo. What we're better known for at Moogsoft is we really pioneered the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in the DevOps service assurance space. And in particular, today, we talk a lot about Observability 2.0. And really what that is about is trying to equip smart dev operators, site reliability engineers with the core tool to help them make sense of the telemetry, and there is a lot of it in observability, and try and turn that into actionable stuff that they can go do right now to make sure that their digital service is available.
In the DevOps community, it seems to me that you're the only major player that's actually using the word observability as a major part of your platform.
That may be the case, and we're no stranger to sort of pioneering ways of looking at things. It's been one of the sort of the core foundational precepts of Moogsoft as a company that we like to try and bring new ideas to. Let's face it. Keeping computers available, applications available, services available has been a problem ever since the first silicon chip was wired to another. The truth of it is that what we're not short of today with observability is telemetry, and telemetry in every guise, whether it's your traditional sort of time series metrics, logs, application logs, traces, APM, all of that stuff. There is just a massive lake of data out there, and yet we still have this perpetual issue with the SRE world, the DevOps world of, well, is my application available? Why is it slowing down? Why am I getting complaints from customers? Why is that experience not what I want it to be? And what we're trying to do is to bridge that gap. And our sense is that observability can only go so far in terms of just providing that data, and it runs into a kind of a brick wall of actionability.
You've used the word telemetry multiple times here. In the context that you're talking about, what does that mean?
So it really is just the data that the infrastructure and the applications will send you about its status. So, it could be something as simple as the CPU utilization percentage on my laptop here. If you look at that, that'll wiggle around as a graph. If I do something unusual to it, it might spike up or it might spike down. That's telemetry, that stream of data. It could be an application log message, somebody logging in, a file system filling up, a database becoming unavailable, a container recycling. It could be any of those things are capable of sending you a message from various different layers of platforms. It could be an application trace. It could be a developer log message. It's really any data that is there to try and help you understand how well my application, my infrastructure is doing.
How do you want to be engaged with the DevOps community? I mean, that's what we're talking about with All Day DevOps. You're going to have 30,000 practitioners together. How would you like to engage with them? So
we want to make sure that we are close to understanding what their day-to-day frustrations and needs are. I mean, I've always believed all the way through my career that the closer you are to the end users of your technology, the better technology you'll build. And I kind of have this sort of it's maybe got a little bit more sort of traction in recent years, where some of the kind of the players that try and enter this kind of developer-led market take almost a sort of a arm's length view as to their end customers. It's like, if you don't like it, tough. We're not gonna worry about the very specific edge cases. This is a product for the masses, which means gets mistranslated in my view as not a product for all. So we want to understand, where the frustrations are with the current stack. We want to be close to making sure that everything that we deliver has got real value to our target customers, because at the end of the day, we want to be the foundation of their approach to service assurance and not an add-on at some later point. And of course, we've been trying to do that with, our Adam Frank, who's an ambassador at DevOps. He's going to be at All Day DevOps. Just, published a book, one of these Observability with DevOps for Dummies. And I'm sure there'll be more of that. So he's going to be very actively involved. And of course, as a company, Moogsoft, we just want to get behind supporting what we think is an excellent program here.
How has the pandemic affected your hiring? I assume you're hiring, everybody is. So how have you been affected by that?
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because, pre-COVID, so much has changed. I mean, even the hiring process itself, we have a new CFO who joined us a few months back now. And, I hired that guy having hardly spent any time face-to-face with him. I think we had a coffee. He happens to live a couple of miles away from where I am. So we ended up managed to, grab a coffee in a local store. But pretty much after, the whole process has been done. So everything is done by Zoom. And in some regards, it's more efficient. In other regards, it's just different. I mean, it's impossible to read the non-visual signals of being in the same room with someone. But, I think there are some hidden benefits to it. And this remote working paradigm that we're all working to can move faster. And, let me just throw one thing out there. I think we all agree in our industry that we want to build a more inclusive technology industry. Sure. And we want to build a more diverse technology industry. And funnily enough, I think the recruitment process, there's an opportunity with the new recruitment process for it to be more inclusive and more diverse. And, hopefully, we it's a bit of a much used trope, right? The build back better. But hopefully, as COVID recedes and reality returns, some of that will persist.
This isn't your first rodeo. You've been so many companies before that you started and kicked off. The difference here for me is that you don't have to hire locally anymore, right?
No.
And that really does open up the field on how you can grow your company.
Yeah, and we have, engineers already from Hawaii to, Montreal and the UK, of course. And, we all were, Moogsoft is fully virtual. I mean, we have a small office in San Francisco and a small office in London. But, the bulk of the employees all work from home and use, a digital sort of workplace as their place of being. And it comes with incredible flexibility. And when we went into this, I was a little bit nervous because about half of our employee base turned up in a major office of some sort of ours, that there would be pushback from it. But I've had no end of thanks. Hey, I really wanted to move to wherever, get closer to parents, friends, family, better schooling for the kids, whatever it might be. They've been able to do that. And, you get better employees, happier employees. Everyone's a winner. And, we've, I think, adjusted very well. I love it. I mean, I, get to spend time with my family now. Back in the old days, I was forever on the road, forever commuting. It was a fairly miserable existence.
Well, the big thing too, for those of us that are nocturnal, when you're working remote, that means you can work when your brain is working best.
That's right. That's right. And, again, there is so much of the workplace prior to COVID that had more in common with urbanization and factories from the 19th century.
That's right.
Than it did with the knowledge economy that we're all in. I mean, do you really need to see the physical presence of an individual to know that they're being productive? I mean, it's kind of nonsense, really. Yeah, look, I miss the fun of being able to, I'm a Brit in America, so, I still follow soccer, as we call it here, and, cricket, and there are one or two other Brits in the office that I'd, be able to lament West Bromwich Albion's latest defeat with. And yeah, I miss that, some of the after work social stuff, but that will return as social distancing eases and the pandemic goes away. But net, I think it's a big positive.
I do too. To kind of round out, what are you looking forward to most for All Day DevOps? Did you see anything that really intrigued you?
Yeah, there's some fascinating talks. So the Ask Me Anything keynote from Benjamin Taylor, it looks really fantastic.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, and I mean, Ask Me Anything. I mean, I think I'd be very nervous about standing up with that as the title. The skeletons in your closet might get tracked out in front of you unless you're very careful. But yeah, I mean, I think you've lined up some fantastic speakers, and I'm very interested to hear what they've got to say. I hope Adam really sort of enjoys representing our point of view into the event as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued. I'm excited. I'm eager to participate.
Great, Phil. Thank you so much again for sponsoring and your support. We're looking forward to seeing your team in the Slack channels all day long so that they can be answering questions about observability during the day. So Perfect. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on November 12th.
See you November 12th. Bye.
Hi, I'm Mark Miller with All Day DevOps. I am the co-founder of All Day DevOps with Derek Weeks, and I'm here with Michelle Dupty from Sonatype. Michelle, I haven't seen you in months.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing good. For people that know that Sonatype is one of the main sponsors behind All Day DevOps, tell them a little bit about what Sonatype and what they do.
Yeah, I mean, we really help development organizations work smarter, fix faster, deliver applications to market as quickly as they can to help their organizations digitally transform. And we have solutions that help them manage their open source components to help build those applications faster and make sure that they pick the most secure and high quality open source components to use in those applications.
One of the things that I like to talk to people about too, Michelle, is why is Sonatype involved so much in the DevOps community? What's the interest there?
Yeah, well, I mean, Sonatype actually has a long history of in the open source community. We are actually the caretakers of Maven Central, which is the largest repository for Java components worldwide. We've had a free open source binary repository tool called Sonatype Nexus that's been around for years. And so DevOps teams have been using these free tools for a very, very long time. And so we've always been kind of a part of DevOps from the very beginning as organizations, again, are starting to build applications more under these DevOps practices and methodology, and they're using open source in these applications. They need tools to help them manage and control those components and get those components from the public repositories where they're housed.
How has the company responded to COVID in the work environment? I know we were mainly remote. Has it affected us at all?
Yeah, I mean, the large majority of employees at Sonatype have always worked remotely. So I think like from our engineering, our DevOps teams, they didn't really miss a beat. I think on other parts of our organization, in other areas, we were more focused on offices. And so some of that took a little bit of time. From a marketing perspective, I think just like any other organization, the biggest change was, we like to engage with our customers in face-to-face meetings a lot. We host our own meetings, we go to events, we like to participate in DevOps summits and practices. And so the biggest change for us was taking all of those meetings virtual. And that was a big change for us.
The other thing that people are talking about now too is the change in hiring because of remote environments. Is Sonatype hiring now?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We actually have a very big goal to hire across the entire organization, but definitely within our development organization on the product and engineering side. We have a very large goal to hit. So again, because we always were a remote first, especially on the product engineering side, our hiring practices haven't changed. But I will say there's a little more competition out there because we've seen more and more companies move to a remote workforce, and so we're just seeing a little bit more competition for getting those same resources.
Great. Final thing for All Day DevOps, what are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, I mean, every year we look forward to, all of the great people just coming together and sharing their stories and hearing from some of the people who have really pioneered DevOps in this community. I'm excited for all the keynotes that are going to take place and the Ask Me Anything type of style so that we really can, learn from them. And it's just great to see, again, different organizations wanting to share this event with all of their employees and how many employees at big companies are joining for the day. So, we just love to be a part of it. We love to engage with the people that are joining and learn. We always learn ourselves as well.
We got the Club 20 list going right now. I think Sonatype's number 6.
Yep, we definitely have a lot of employees that take that day and definitely attend the conference.
That's great. For those of you watching, the conference is all day, 24 hours on November 12th. We'll have 180 sessions going around the clock. I like to say we're following the sun, starting in India and moving around the world. So hope to see everybody there. Michelle, thank you. Thanks to Sonatype for helping sponsor this. Look forward to it every year.
Great. Thank you.
We really loved adding Cyber Hero Adventures to the lineup here on TechStrong TV, as well as individual episodes available on Digital Anarchist. Gary Berman is the host, producer, creative genius behind Cyber Hero Adventures. In today's episode, he has Kevin Tierney, VP Global Cybersecurity at General Motors, and they have a really great conversation I think you're going to enjoy. Here now is the Cyber Hero Adventures show with Gary Berman.
Hello, and welcome to the Cyber Hero Adventures, Defenders of the Digital Universe show. Today's show focuses on answering the question, what are the key issues and opportunities facing the auto ISAC, and what does the future hold for the industry? Stay tuned to find out more. I'm your host, Gary Berman. Our mission is to shine the light on the people and organizations who keep us safe online while at work, home, and school, and to serve as a business-to-business networking platform for the cybersecurity and IT communities. We've learned that 55% of human communications is nonverbal. That's why we include a video feed so that you have the option of seeing our guests or simply to just listen. You never know who you're going to connect with and how you'll be able to maximize opportunities resulting from hearing from our guests. As the victim of a series of cyber attacks, I've learned that the only time that you hear about hacking or cybersecurity, wait for it, is when the criminals win. Well, not anymore. Let's begin by saying thank you to today's unsung cyber hero, who represents the countless people who toil in anonymity to keep us safe. Let's welcome Kevin Tierney, General Motors Vice President of Global Cybersecurity, responsible for overseeing all aspects of cybersecurity risk across the enterprise. The global cybersecurity team is comprised of security teams covering information technology, product development, manufacturing, autonomous vehicle development, and GM Financial. Kevin's previous role was as GM's Chief Product Cybersecurity Officer, and he built one of the industry's first internal red team penetration testing labs and launched the first security vulnerability disclosure program of any major automaker. Kevin serves as the chairman of the Auto ISAC, working to help move the industry forward in cybersecurity. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Gary, good to see you again.
Thank you. And it's so really cool that you just said again, because for our audience, Kevin is an encore guest and one of our first, and I think we're going to have to give you some kind of certification, or do you want a blazer or something? You know, what can we do to say thank you, Kevin?
No, I think having me on is more than enough, but I appreciate you having me back. And obviously it's a pivotal time in the industry, and also a pivotal time in cybersecurity. October's cybersecurity month across the country. So it's a great time to get back and chat.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And Kevin, so much has changed since you and I, spoke last. How's it going?
Yeah, things are going pretty well. I mean, I think last time we talked, we were pretty early into the pandemic and the situation we're facing. And, I think since that time, we as GM, the ISAC, we're going to talk a lot about today, as well as, many industries have figured out ways to move forward and to continue to be productive, continue to be secure, and really continue to move forward, because it's as tough as everything is right now. We all realize that we have to continue moving forward in this new way. And so I'm proud of, frankly, the GM team that I'm, a part of in my professional world. Very proud of the ISAC, proud of, the industry for really kind of dusting ourselves off and getting back to work and doing it safely, doing it securely, but continuing to move forward. So I'm pretty happy with where we are.
You mentioned the Auto ISAC. For those listeners who may not be familiar with it, can you just give us an overview of what does ISAC stand for and what's your mission?
Yeah, so an ISAC is an information sharing and analysis center. It's actually a group that is organized through the DHS, some laws as it relates to the Department of Homeland Security, that gives industry an ability to freely exchange security threat information. And so while it's not directly a government organization, they're nonprofits and they're independent. What they do is they allow different industries to come together and share this information in a confidential and secure way, so that industries are able to get ahead of the security threats together, because we all know that we're in this together. Whether a cyber issue impacts GM or Ford or Chrysler or Toyota or anyone, we know it's an issue for the overall industry. We know it's an issue for our customers. And so it makes sense that we get together and we try to stay ahead of that, because we're having to fight, as you mentioned at the beginning, the cyber criminal element, and that takes the whole community working together. So automotive stood up an ISAC back in 2015. So we're about 5 years old. There's many other ISACs, whether it's health, financial, it really covers many different industry sectors. And so I'm proud to be chairing the ISAC. I started in January, and we continue to partner across the OEMs as well as the key suppliers as it relates to our connected vehicles and services, and making sure that the industry is safe from security vulnerabilities.
What you're saying is incredibly important and taps into something that, as I first started to listen and learn about cybersecurity, really struck me, which is that criminals seem to be kind of horizontally oriented and connected, and they have always shared information really freely, where the defenders are much more vertically oriented because they maybe want to protect their intellectual property, things like that. First of all, is that a valid assumption, and it certainly sounds like it's changing for the better?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really smart point, Gary, because you're right. The cyber criminals, or even nation state level threat actors, they work together. They share information on the deep and dark web. They don't have rules of engagement or antitrust laws or confidentiality. And it really, I agree with you, presents a real challenge. So the ISAC framework is our ability to do the same on our side, is to really share that information. Of course, there is, of course, sensitive things that we can't share, and we follow all those rules and laws. But where it comes to information that can help each other avoid major threats and cyber cyber attacks, we are able to leverage that platform to have that communication. So I agree, it's a very important thing. And if we stay in our separate companies and domains, could lead to major issues if we can't share that information effectively.
So going back to the 5 years ago, Kevin, when you and your colleagues started the Auto ISAC, was it very difficult to kind of get these early adopters to play nice together, and you must see that it's getting better and better because a rising tide lifts all ships.
Right. Yeah, I think anytime you get together a group of competitors, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to grow that trust and grow that ability to share information. We're all fierce competitors. Any industry is. I think automotive especially. It's a tough business. We're all trying to gain the trust and business of the consumers out there. So all that withstanding, that's always going to be the case. We realize, though, in the cyber area, it's really non-competitive. We have to work together. If there's an issue in one OEM brand, it's going to affect the whole industry, and the willingness of consumers to adopt new technologies like autonomous vehicles or vehicle-to-vehicle communication or other infotainment and telematics type of offerings. So it's taken time, frankly, and I think it's true for any industry, any ISAC. It takes time to build up that trust, build up that willingness to share information. But we do have, the great protections of the ISAC. That information is held very securely. And so I think over the last 5 years, we've made tremendous progress to build those relationships across the industry and be able to share information. And so I'm proud of where we are. And frankly, as we've moved into the COVID work from home virtual world, we're really depending on those relationships. We're continuing to move the ISAC forward, having built a lot of those strong relationships, and we're taking advantage of it now that we're apart.
Yeah, I mean, what you're referring to is trust, and I've always thought it was just kind of like mind blowing that we work in an industry that's called zero trust.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's different ways to look at it, and but I agree. We do need trust within an ISAC structure, because that's what allows us to share information freely and move things forward. But yeah, it's always an interesting thing, and we have to continue to assess where the industry is, assess where the ISAC is, understand where we need to go over the next 5 years. We're spending a lot of time on that these days, always trying to look ahead.
You mentioned earlier, of course, the effects of COVID since we last spoke, and given the disruption throughout the globe, what are some of the lessons learned within the auto industry about best practices?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something I ask the team all the time: is what are we learning from this situation? And I think there's a lot of different dimensions to it. Maybe the very first apparent one is when you're working in a virtual work from home arrangement. How does the security posture of that structure change how you approach corporate security? And I think there's been a lot of learnings there. I think in general we were well positioned because we're a global company that has to operate 24/7 on multiple continents and people in airplanes. And so our networks were already really well prepared for a virtual work environment with a few minor tweaks here and there. But I think as this persists, we continue to learn more ways to optimize that and even, take it to the next level. And there's some benefits. It's a pro-con type of situation. So I think we've made that transition very well, and I think it's going well. The other dimension is looking at crisis management and response, right? Even though this is a health, issue and response, when we talk about cyber issues and cyber response, there's similar aspects. Crisis management is somewhat of a agnostic concept. And so yeah. I've asked our team to continue to watch, how our country, the globe responds to this sort of situation, what works, what doesn't, what are ways to really make sure that, hey, if this was a cyber virus spreading kind of unabatedly through the globe, how would our response be the same? How would it be different? What things have worked? What haven't? I think this is a learning opportunity in terms of something that is so pervasive. It's extremely hard to manage in a centralized way, but as you move out to decentralized mitigations, you see unevenness. So it's a big challenge, and one, frankly, with a big pervasive cyber attack, you might face a similar way. So really trying to learn from that as well. And then I guess my last point would be, just in general, there's been a tremendous shift in just understanding this work from home dynamic with our teams, and being able to move into that in such a strong way, really continue to see the performance and the productivity, and really not missing a beat. And we're extremely happy with the entire team and how things have moved on. There's just tremendous progress happening this year, and so I think being able to demonstrate that and show that even in a work from home arrangement with all these challenges, we can still be one team. I think it's been phenomenal. So there's a lot to learn, and I think there's still more to learn. But it's been a tremendous year, a lot of challenges, but we're still moving forward.
Indeed. And one of the things that I'm interested in hearing from you, given the global nature of General Motors and vehicle sales, is this kind of idea of getting back to some sort of normal. Do you envision having some sort of hybrid in-person meetings, practicing, of course, the CDC, guidelines? Do you envision that sometime in the near future?
Yeah, I do. I think, well, again, if I had a crystal ball, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, Gary, unfortunately. But
wait. Time out. Okay, first of all, let me do the humor, and then you focus on cybersecurity. That way we stay in our lanes.
I always have to throw it in there every once in a while. But in all seriousness, it is going to shift. It is going to change, and we're already seeing that already. I mean, GM has announced publicly we're officially not going back to the office until after next June. June 30th of 2021, officially, unless something dramatic changed. That's kind of our policy. Now, in the interim, that doesn't mean that there isn't some opportunity for socially distanced, masked, very safe, secure, face-to-face interactions as appropriate. And those would be very few and far between. But something that's requiring some key team members to get together, where we know there's value in face-to-face interaction, and we're trying to enable that. But we're not moving towards everyone sitting at their desks, working 8 hours. From the office in the short term. I think when we come out on the other side of this, I think we are going to see a hybrid model. I think we'll see people in the office, sometimes working from home, others, and depending on the sort of work and sort of meetings and interactions that are required, on any given day. So I think all businesses are going to have to adapt and move to that and figure that out. And I don't know exactly what it will look like, but you can definitely sense there's a strong desire to move to a more flexible model, on the back end of this.
There's some data, behind what you're saying. We recently had a show. It hasn't been aired yet with PwC, and they've done a series of surveys about this, through the lens of CISOs. And what they are finding is that it is going to be a hybrid approach. About 70% of workers want to go back to the office, or are going to be going back to the office. And the optimal kind of allocation of that time is maybe 3 days a week and then 2 days a week, and depending on the individual circumstance, that could shift. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I agree. Hybrid approaches will probably be required. I think it varies. It varies depending on the role. It depends on the industry. I mean, if you think about it, I think in some of these studies and discussions, a lot of the focus is on the tech industry specifically, and maybe just the software industry, where a lot of the workers can work remotely. They're working behind a computer and working in the digital realm already. So those are very easy to make those sort of leaps towards some sort of virtual arrangement. But if you think about an industry like the automotive industry, we still produce a product, right? We still work with hardware. We build products. We have assembly plants. We have laboratories where we're testing physical properties, and that's a different paradigm, and that does require people working together. And in physical presence together, and that's not going to change. We have lots of work going on to do more and more simulation and virtualization and things of that nature to move faster, of course, but you can't eliminate the need for getting in a car and driving it and using laboratories to do testing. So I think there'll be a hybrid. I think it'll be different by every industry, and it'll be different by every sort of job function too.
So Kevin, given the incredible changes and the pace of change that General Motors has been through, the whole world has been through all of this, for example, you creating ventilators, with no previous experience in maybe, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. This agility, do you think this is something that is going to remain once we get through this period of time? Do you think people are taking those lessons and are going to be able to hang on to the benefits of being agile?
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. And first of all, I'd say the GM team has always been very agile when emergencies strike. Right? I'm very proud of the whole team and how fast they can react to the challenges we face in multiple just different dimensions. Ventilators were one, but frankly, we do it every day as it relates to our vehicles and keeping them high quality and producing around the world. However, I agree with you. There's a even stronger focus on agility in today's business world. Things are happening so fast. Every day is like a month, and we know that there's strong competition out there that are also moving very quickly. And so as a big company, we're putting a lot of focus on agility and how do we move quickly and how do we move faster to provide the products that our customers want out there. So yes, there's things that we're learning, and yes, it's a huge focus. And I think all companies are looking at ways that they can move faster in this world where a day is a long time.
That would actually be a good title for the show. A day is a month. Yeah. And speaking of your leadership, Mary Barra has been rather incredible through this difficult period. What's it like from dealing with her and the team about cybersecurity? I have to assume that it's an incredibly high priority for the entire corporation. Is that valid?
Yeah, it is, and frankly, that's what helps enable me to do my best job is the support that they give us. So, cyber is a top priority with the company. It's a top priority with our board of directors. We meet with Mary and her staff at least quarterly, and we meet with our board at least quarterly. And it's a top focus for them. They ask a lot of questions, relative to what we're doing in the company, relative to things happening in the external environment, how they can impact us. And how do we really look at cyber as a key input into our business decisions? And so with their great support, starting with Mary, but really the entire senior leadership team, really helps our team to be enabled to do our best work.
So thinking of cybersecurity just as a whole, I just want to put out this question and ask you to, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the cybersecurity of vehicles?
Yes, it's a good question, and it's hard to say specifically one number versus another, especially down to decimal points or anything of that nature.
Wait, hold it. I didn't ask for that level of specificity. This is like a concept.
3, yeah.
We're looking for some order of magnitude.
Please provide. But in all seriousness, it's what I'd say is I feel very confident of General Motors products, and I think the entire industry has made substantial movements in terms of adding protections and working to mitigate the risks of cybersecurity events in vehicles. I have the most intimate knowledge of GM products. That was actually my previous role, was focused purely on the security of our products. And so, I have very good confidence. It's my job, was my job before, it's my job still to make sure that all of our vehicles meet the right levels of security for our customers. And so we're in good shape. We continue to look at threats. We continue to look at where the technology is going, and we continue to evolve and adapt and move forward and improve things and change things where it's necessary. So I think your previous comments around agility and adaptability, it's key in cybersecurity because things always change. And so you can't ever sit back on your laurels and say, yeah, we're 100% secure and we're done. We're never done. You have to always be looking ahead to the next threat next risk, and continuing to take those steps, whether it's in the product, whether it's in the IT systems, whether it's in your manufacturing systems. They all have to be looked at holistically. So, but in general, I'm very pleased with all the efforts of the team, with our new C8 Corvette and a whole suite of products that are coming after it. We're launching our new vehicle intelligence platform, electrical system, which really takes cybersecurity to even the next level. So we're proud of what we've done here.
So tell us a little bit more about the vehicle intelligence program.
Yeah, so every vehicle is underpinned with a series of computers and networks that allows all the features and functions that you use to really work together. And most customers, really, if you do it well, shouldn't really understand that that's there. But it's the underpinnings that add all the new features and functions that so many of our customers desire. It also increases the complexity. We've talked about how it's harder and harder to work on cars, and that's because there's more and more software, and there's more and more technical complexity there to enable these new levels of features and functions that we hadn't seen 10 or 15 years ago in vehicles. And so the way that we've always approached those electrical systems is making sure that they're safe, have high uptime and availability, high quality, and that they're providing the features and functions in an efficient way to our consumers. And many years ago now, as we started the product cybersecurity function within GM, we also started to look at how we make sure that system, as it gets more and more connectivity, stays secure. And so the vehicle intelligence platform is our latest version of that. It's state of the art and does a lot of great security functions. We have security in our previous architectures, but as I've mentioned, we're continuing to move the needle forward. You can't just stay stagnant, and you want to continue advancing. So it's an exciting time for sure.
Indeed. What is your assessment of the number of lines of code in a typical vehicle?
Well, it's frankly hard to nail that down, and it likely changes by vehicle and by model year and even the sort of system you have. People quote hundreds of millions of lines of code and things like that. I think it's there's pros and cons of that. I think at the end of the day, it's a complex system. There's a complex supply chain. There's a lot of software that's put in the vehicle, and a lot of it's on us to figure out frankly how to reduce some of that complexity. Just because you have 300 million lines of code doesn't necessarily mean you really need 300 lines, a million lines of code. Reducing it in some ways is also the goal as well. So it's a multidimensional problem, but I think at the basis, cars are very complex, and they're getting more complex. And as we move into autonomous vehicles, we add even more software. And so it has to be a balance of security, safety, as well as the functionality.
And pertaining to autonomous vehicles, where would you say we are in terms of really having them be accepted as kind of normal? And I'll use a quick analogy that I recently came across about elevators, that when they were first invented, I think a gentleman, Mr. Otis was one of the first people to do elevators. People would not get in because they didn't have a level of comfort of the operator who would take them up and down. And it took a period of time for people to be willing to abdicate that experience to a machine. Where do you think we are using that kind of analogy?
Yeah, I think it's a good analogy, and I think it's probably true for a lot of different technologies. And what I'd say is we're still pretty early in that journey. With our Cruise group out in San Francisco, they're doing tremendous work, really advancing the state of the art and the technology as it relates to autonomous ride-sharing platforms, and they're making tremendous progress. But again, I'm not going to put a specific date out there because there is still challenges that we're working through. The whole industry is because it's a very complex problem. There's a lot of different corner cases and scenarios that have to be worked through, and the technology is moving very quickly. So I know it's going to happen. Exactly when, I'm not sure. But one of the key focuses for me and my team and our team at Cruise that's a part of our team is making sure when that platform launches, it's very secure, because we know as you get into an autonomous vehicle where there's all the connectivity and it's obviously self-driving software and sensors, security becomes a key priority, a top priority of that. And so we've been doing work since the beginning to make sure of that. So it's it's going to be a journey, of course, just like any technology adoption, but team's doing great work.
And maybe you can share with our audience a little bit of background about LiDAR. It's not something that the general population anyways probably has heard too much about it. How does that work?
Yeah, so I actually worked a little bit on LiDAR in some of my previous jobs, but it's not a huge focus in my cybersecurity job today. What I'd say is, in general, as you move to an autonomous platform, you need multiple types of sensors, because it's a concept kind of called sensor diversity, because every sensor has strengths and weaknesses, and so you kind of want to make up for those different strengths and weaknesses by having different types of sensors. LiDAR is actually use a laser to send a point of light out and get a return, and you can do pretty phenomenal things in terms of imaging an area in front of a vehicle or around the vehicle or what have you, and kind of depending on the complexity of the LiDAR, that picture can become, very realistic. Pretty amazing technologies out there. And, but the challenge with LiDAR has been it's extremely expensive and extremely complicated, not only to package it within a vehicle, but, build at the scale and kind of deal with all the environment that a vehicle encounters. But there's a lot of suppliers out there and partners that we're working with to really advance that technology and bring that to life in a vehicle environment. And so lots of working going on. I'm not the expert in that area, but definitely an exciting area.
And as we're wrapping up here, I had the opportunity to give a presentation regarding the CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification put forth by the Department of Defense, requiring their 300,000 or so vendors to be certified in one of 5 levels as they improve their security posture. I assume that you're very involved in a leadership role of the supply chain at General Motors, which must be quite complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of 2 layers to that. Of course, the supply chain is a critical aspect for us. It's a top priority. Actually, it's something we have several special initiatives going on as we speak, as it relates to our supply chain and making sure that we can understand our supply chain risk. We can help quantify, where we need to focus, because of course it's a huge supply chain, a lot of different vendors and suppliers and parts and things of that nature. And then, make sure that we have the right resources and tools to help that supply chain. So that's something that, we've been working on for many years, and we continue to really hit the accelerator on to really help our collective ecosystem, put security first. Not every company is like General Motors or a large scale company that can afford some of these things. We deal with a lot of small and medium sized businesses, and we need to help with resources to help make sure they can put security first. You mentioned, though, also CMMC, which is really a Department of Defense government type of supply chain program. And so we're looking at that with a lot of focus, especially with our new GM Defense business that's been stood up and is making a lot of progress. And so we also have to be able to look at our supply chain in that regard as a potential defense contractor level company. So we have a lot of different lenses that we have to look at, and a lot of different types of industries and related certifications like that factor in. So definitely top of our one of our top priorities as well.
So as we're wrapping up, is there anything else you'd like to add to amplify your mission at GM or the Auto ISAC?
No, I appreciate you having me, Gary. I mentioned, we're in the midst of October National Cybersecurity Awareness Month here. So, it's great to get to talk to you during this month. I know there's a lot of activity out there, but these are always engaging conversations that kind of cover both cyber and business details. So, I think it's a fun conversation. I think if you're in the industry, automotive related industry, and you're not familiar with the ISAC, please visit their website. There's information at automotiveisec.com. They do all kinds of great efforts, including we had a summit this year, in October this month, and those are open to the public. So, I encourage people to look into those in future years. But there's other resources if you're part of the industry and want to join. Reach out. Happy to have you. It's a great forum to be a part of. But really appreciate having me, Gary, and always look forward to these conversations. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being a real life unsung cyber hero. And so for more information, we'll include Kevin's information in the show notes. And thanks so much to you, Kevin, and your entire team for what you do.
Great. Thanks, Gary.
If you would like to be a guest on our show, just send an email to Gary at cyberheroescomics.com. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Gary. Another great show there at Cyber Hero Adventures. Just a quick shout out to the audience, especially any tech vendors, cyber vendors out there. We are looking for sponsorships on Cyber Hero Adventures as Gary continues his mission. So if you're interested there, please do send an email over to sales@mediaops.com, and we'll get Gary and the team involved. Next up, we're going to go to our Chief Content Officer, Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor. And Charlene is going to share with us the news around the Media Ops sites today, as well as a fantastic preview of, we have some really high-quality webinars coming up this week that I think you'll enjoy. And then Charlene also has an interview with Ian Pitt of LogMeIn around their State of IT in a Remote World study. So here now, Charlene O'Hanlon.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. Today's November 16th, and I can't believe how quickly the week and the month is flying by. Welcome to another week of TechStrong TV, and I'm here now with the Monday edition of the news headlines. First up on DevOps.com, we have an article that looks at the various multi-cloud strategies for organizations. Multi-cloud is becoming more popular among organizations as they try to avoid lock-in, port certain workloads over to different clouds to ensure redundancy and a host of other benefits. But there is no one-size-fits-all approach to multi-cloud. For such a strategy to work, it's important for an organization to first determine how multi-cloud will work best for them. Then and only then can they determine which multi-cloud architecture to use that will best suit their needs. This article discusses the various architectures: a redeployment of an application, cloudification, relocation, multi-cloud factoring, multi-cloud rebinding, replacement architecture, multi-application modernization, and so on. The possibilities are endless and discusses the best scenario for each. This is truly an article to check out if multi-cloud is leaving you scratching your head. All right, we also have a piece that looks at the need for education in helping developers embrace DevSecOps. It's not just about any type of education, though. Contextual, hands-on education that is delivered in relevant programming languages and frameworks with challenges that mimic those that a developer might come across in the real world is a far more engaging approach, according to the article. And a scaffolded approach to security learning works even better. For developers, that means seeing an exploit of a vulnerable code in action. With the context of front-end and back-end views side by side, there is a tangible link between actions taken during the coding process and what an attacker can potentially do with cut corners, misconfigurations, or accidents that are not caught and remedied. It's kind of like watching a chess tournament. I got a Queen's Gambit reference there. In news, the Linux Foundation has added a DevOps module to its lineup of professional certificate programs. The Introduction to DevOps Practices and Tools program combines 3 existing online training courses: Introduction to DevOps and Site Reliability Engineering, Introduction to Jenkins, and Introduction to Serverless on Kubernetes. Those are being brought into one program for a more structured program. Each course will continue to be available to audit at no cost. The Foundation believes DevOps training for IT professionals is now as much about staying relevant as it is about potentially commanding a higher salary. And as more organizations and IT organizations accelerate digital business transformation initiatives in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting economic downturn, there is a renewed sense of urgency around DevOps. Finally, we have an interview with JFrog CEO Shlomi Ben-Haim, following the company's announcing its quarterly results for the first time since it went public. He noted that the rate at which new application development projects being launched since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in the spring is now declining, and he doesn't expect to see a real rise in new projects until next spring. The company did well in its third quarter. Revenue was $38.9 million, an increase of 40% from the same period a year ago. And in the fourth quarter, JFrog is projecting revenue between $40.9 million and $41.9 million, with full-year results falling between $149 million and $150 million. However, the slowdown in new projects could portend a general slowdown as digital transformation projects, which spiked at the beginning of the pandemic, start to wind down or go into maintenance mode. That would mean a general slowdown in the number and complexity of new projects. Next spring is going to be an interesting time, I can already tell. Over on Container Journal, Mirantis has added an extensions API to the open source Lens Kubernetes integrated development environment that it acquired earlier this year. The company wants to make it easier for providers of platforms for building applications deployed in Kubernetes environments to incorporate an IDE, and Lens offers a more intuitive interface that hides the more cumbersome kubectl interface, which many developers rely on today to build and deploy Kubernetes applications. We've talked about the complexity of Kubernetes before extensively, and Mirantis is betting that an IDE optimized for Kubernetes will gain broader appeal as developers assume more responsibility for managing Kubernetes infrastructures. And on Security Boulevard, we have news of Menlo Security's latest round of funding, $100 million to be exact, to fuel an effort to better secure cloud environments using the Menlo Security Isolation Platform and adaptive clientless rendering technology, which fetches and executes the functions of a web browser on its platform rather than on a corporate network. That approach enables Menlo Security to only surface sanitized, non-executable content on any device, providing organizations with a zero-trust approach to IT security that is managed on their behalf. That's especially critical at a time when the bulk of end users are working from home to help combat the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, he said. Finally, we have an article that looks at why organizations should incorporate Linux into their security strategy. Considering how pervasive Linux is the OS that runs everything from IoT devices to cloud environments. It's increasingly becoming a target for hackers, especially during the pandemic, as employees are working from home on networks that may or may not be locked down. That's why organizations should develop a security strategy that includes protection against Linux-based malware and other threats to the OS. All right, that's all I have for this edition of the news headlines. Please check back tomorrow when I'll have a fresh batch to you from these news sites, all three sites, Security Boulevard, DevOps.com, and Container Journal. But until then, have a great day and please stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Ian Pitt, who is the Senior Vice President and CIO of LogMeIn. Ian, thank you so much for taking the time talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
No, Charlene, thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
All right, great. Well, I know LogMeIn just recently came out with a new report called The Surprising New State of IT in a Remote World, Tackling Challenges and Redefining IT for Future Success. That is a really long title, I have to tell you. But it's a great title because the topic is so timely, and so many organizations are grappling with the just the management of having workers work fully remote or at least partially remote, and a lot of the implications in that regarding productivity and security and so many other facets. So let's talk a little bit about that report, if you don't mind. I'd love to hear some of the findings of the report, and then maybe kind of take your temperature on where you kind of see the market heading moving forward.
Absolutely, and it is a long title for sure, but I think it neatly encapsulates everything that many organizations are going through at this point in time. A lot of the material came from our own findings. We were one of the early companies to just pull the plug on the offices way back in March and move everyone home. Back when we thought that perhaps this was going to be for 2 weeks or maybe a month or maybe even 2 months. And here we are 8 months later with no end in sight. And it also ties into one of the core value props of what the company is. We are the remote access company. So we've taken our learnings, we've encapsulated into the document, and in many cases, we have been living this directly. And so we wanted to share that with the industry to make sure that our findings and learnings were certainly not just kept within the company itself.
So did you talk to folks who are customers of yours and not customers, or what is the base of respondents to the survey?
Yeah, very wide. Clearly, if you just talk to customers, you get one biased view because they're using the products and they understand how to use the technology. So we went wider. And this has happened at multiple levels within the entire organization. We maintain interactions with fellow CIOs, with fellow IT organizations, whether they're customers or not. So the overall report does represent a very wide range and guides its accuracy and its impact on the industry.
Okay. All right. So tell me some of the results of the report. What did you guys find, and maybe what are some of the results that surprised you guys?
Probably the rapid shift home in terms of how adaptable people were. Probably what happens after the pandemic, if it does come to an end or vaccines get delivered. We're not going to focus on that in this meeting.
Right.
But we expected a number of people to suddenly rush back to the offices. Once you go through a degree of isolation, most people certainly want to go back to the old ways. I think we've now been in the situation for so long, the muscle memory has been built. And so we are finding this is going to become a very long-lasting shift in how people are working. And that naturally drives adjustment of how we get the job done. IT has always been one of those kind of in the shadows operations for companies. And the last couple of months has really indicated what it can actually do for an organization. And I think that goes two ways. It's indicating how the teams have to adjust in these remote working ways, and also the value they can bring to an organization, which is then allowing an organization to perhaps spend its dollars, its currency in other areas rather than maintaining facilities. We've proven that we don't have to be in an office, but I think we were taken back by probably the widespread nature of how so few people are actually intending on moving back.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think now all employees know exactly what the IT department does, right?
they now understand what the cloud means, and they now kind of get the technology on a higher level, or on a deeper level, I should say, than they knew before the pandemic. And I would posit that a lot of organizations that maybe previously relied on IT but didn't really put it in the spotlight, that now people understand what the job functions are within different organizations, especially in IT. So but do you think that that's also kind of increasing or decreasing their reliance on IT departments now that so many organizations are looking at possibly a full-time remote work setup, moving forward? Do you think that employees are actually going to become more self-reliant when it comes to IT issues?
I wish there was a solid yes and no answer to that.
Right.
Because what we're seeing is it's actually mixed. People are becoming more reliant on themselves because they're now more comfortable at working from home. Mm-hmm. Because they can't walk up to an IT help desk person standing behind a Genius bar and get the answer just like that. We are finding that some users are solving their own problems. And because it can be a case of out of sight, out of mind. Some people are like saying, "Oh, we don't need IT anymore." However, what the reality is when everyone was together, it was easy to get the message out. It was easy to help people. It was easy to secure the environment. Mm-hmm. Now we've gone from tens of offices to thousands of offices within a given organization. It's actually driven the need for IT to be much more pervasive throughout the organization, but people don't see it. So they understand the benefit, but we're now finding ourselves having to do more education in terms of just because you're home and you're probably comfortable now doesn't mean security takes a backseat, or please hit the update on your machine to make sure it's kept up to date and make sure you change your default router password. So we've moved the organizations from a go do it for the users into a do it plus also encourage, which is good for IT because it moves them into the more consultative state, where they really should be operating, not just the order takers. So
yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because over the last year or so, pre-pandemic, we had been hearing a lot about the role of automation and its ability to actually shift IT roles into that more consultative, value add position. But now it looks like, technology is kind of, the world is kind of pushed technology in that way. And organizations are maybe looking at new solutions such as automation, things that really do kind of encourage folks to be able to do it themselves, or kind of give them the tools to be able to do it themselves. So IT does become more of that, value add to the organization beyond just, kind of break fix type things. Do you see automation being embraced in different areas within an organization beyond IT that's kind of helping maybe improve the productivity for employees, or other ways to help them do their jobs better while they are working remotely?
Absolutely. And it's speaking from our own experience, we've been driving that for many years. Mm-hmm. I would say IT always plays a role, but it's the hidden aspects of IT. It's the technology. It's not the people. So we have robotic process automation, or RPA, going well in places like finance. When we were lucky when the pandemic hit we didn't have to build a laptop for a user, for example, when they came on board. We simply shipped a machine, they logged into a portal, and the company image came down. So we've been living the automation dream for a while. And we've been using the time at home and the focus, and to be honest, the absolute need to keep the system scaling in terms of in demand for customers by automating how we do deployments. So we see automation across the traditional development approach to get builds out quickly, to provisioning equipment for both our production systems and our end users. within certain business units, such as HR for provisioning and deprovisioning of users, and in finance for automating a lot of the processes that were otherwise done by people. Now, on top of that, we also take an opportunity to clean some of those processes up, because automating a bad process is never going to lead to good results.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about the need for maybe IT and organizations to kind of get help because to your point, they're now managing possibly thousands of little offices instead of one big office or a couple offices. So do you see maybe organizations increasing their reliance on, say, managed services or other services delivered to them, maybe automatically or through a managed services provider to kind of help them kind of bridge that gap between their disparate workforce now and their IT department?
I mean, I'd say yes, but it depends very much on scale and maturity. We were lucky from a company in that we had a well-sized IT team who had been used to delivering remote services. But talking to some of my peers, and certainly in the customers we interviewed for the white paper, there is a move to adopting new ways of working. If you had a fairly small IT team that was designed around an office, it's very hard to ramp that up or change that mindset pretty much overnight. And that is definitely a role for MSPs to come in and offer those services. It's a pretty mature market. I think a lot of people have perhaps been expanding their contracts with MSPs, or maybe some people are starting to dip their toe into that area as they look beyond their bricks and mortar of how the enterprise should really be in the future.
So looking at the report, the results of the surveys, were there any kind of high-level trends regarding, the future state, if you will, of these organizations beyond the pandemic? Were there anything, any indicators that the organizations are just going to stay remote in the future? And what are some of the steps that they might be taking now to kind of get ahead of the curve, if you will, for the next time?
Well, let's hope there isn't a next time. Although if there is, I think a lot of organizations are going to be in a much better shape than they were 6 to 8 months back. I think the biggest changes we've seen, and this is called out very early in the report, is the fact that most people will in fact stay remote. I think there's been a mass drive over the last couple of months to free companies from their offices. We were the same, trying to remove all infrastructure, even from our HQ offices down in Boston. So to mean that we could move, we could work anywhere, we could close an office and not be impacted by it. I think it's also driven much more move to cloud in terms of removing any of those on-premise systems that were perhaps due for a change, but acting as a catalyst. But we're also seeing ways in which people work differently, adopt different infrastructure, all of which is playing out well for us. We have a lot of cloud-based services. And so people are realizing that you can be productive working from home, but it does change. It does require a complete mindset change, both in how the company operates and also the technology they work on. So I think overall, even if, say, the pandemic ended tomorrow and we all went back, I think there would be a lot of learnings over the last 6 to 8 months that will serve us well going into the future. Even the areas that perhaps are a little surprising, the focus on security. It's been a great opportunity to remind people that even though they're not in the office, security is still front and center. And we've been driving on that heavily as well to make sure that we protect the company. But we've found a lot of tenacity of that message. And even if we all go back, that mindset has been crafted. The other benefit I think is now starting to come real is if you're looking for new people, you no longer have to hire people from around the offices.
Right.
And so we're going to get ourselves into definitely a mindset or a culture where we can now reach much wider into the potential candidate population, regardless of where they are. And that will keep us very remote for the foreseeable future. Changes, different mindset, different behavior, but ultimately all for the good of the company and the industry in which we work.
Yeah, and some might actually say that it's also for the good of the country, because if you're enabling your employees to work from anywhere, that means that the brain trust within that particular city or community stays within that community. They're not all going to metropolitan areas to get jobs and kind of draining.
Absolutely.
So I mean, there are so many different facets to having a remote workforce that are actually beneficial on a number of levels that we could have a whole other conversation about. But I know our time is limited, so I do want to thank you for kind of walking me through some of the results of the survey. If folks are interested in taking a look for themselves, is the report available on the LogMeIn website?
It is. Yep. We'll ask for a very simple registration and then send it down. But we've got infographics and the much longer document, should you wish to go into the detail.
Excellent. Well, Ian, thank you again for your time and your expertise. I really appreciate it. And hopefully, we'll have another conversation again real soon.
Great. Thanks, Charlene. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the Monday edition of the webinars preview. As always, we have a lot of great webinars coming up on DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, and Container Journal. But wanted to let you know about 3 that are happening this week, so that hopefully you can mark your calendar to join us. The first one is happening Tuesday, November 17th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. It's called Demystify the DevOps Landscape with a Periodic Table of DevOps Tools and DevOps Diagram Generator. That's a long title. Sponsored by Digital AI. The Digital AI Periodic Table of DevOps Tools has been a great resource for identifying best-of-breed tools across the software development and delivery lifecycle, while the DevOps Diagram Generator it helps organizations select DevOps tools that are used in the software delivery pipeline and dynamically creates a custom view that shows where each tool fits, how they relate to each other, and where an organization has gaps. So this webinar will actually show attendees how they can leverage these free tools to discover what's new in the DevOps landscape, gain some end-to-end insight into their software release pipeline, detect and plug holes in their software process, in their software delivery process, and some identify some new tools that might actually help them improve their software delivery lifecycle. Good stuff worth checking out. Next one is happening Tuesday also at 1 p.m. Eastern on. It's called I Have an SLO. Now what? Sponsored by Gremlin. This webinar takes a look at SLOs, also known as service level objectives, what they are and how they can actually
help organizations make the best decisions in their software development efforts, rather than being that metric that everybody hates that kind of hangs over their heads. This is actually a webinar that focuses more on SLOs as a way to actually make people happier, from developers and engineers to customers. All right, the last webinar I want to tell you about is also happening on Tuesday, November 17th. This one is at 3 p.m. It's on Security Boulevard, and it's called Integrating Security into the DevOps Toolchain. It's sponsored by Fortanix. This is another look at how organizations can effectively integrate security into their DevOps toolchain to create that seemingly difficult DevSecOps tool process, and organizations will get a look in this webinar at how infrastructure actually plays a big role in understanding and creating a successful DevSecOps process within the organization. Specifically, transforming the legacy data security infrastructure to support developers to help them build security into their processes, such as secrets management. So we'll be taking a look at encryption, APIs, tokenization, APIs, and plugins. Those are some of the technologies that are going to be covered in this webinar. So definitely one worth checking out if you are having any issues in shifting to that DevSecOps mindset and process. All right, that's it for this edition of the webinar's preview. Please check back tomorrow when I'll have a fresh new batch for you. Until then, stay safe.
Okay. Thanks, Charlene. Good stuff. Next, we're going to head over to the Analyst Corner with Mitch. Mitchell just has a video for, it's not just, Mitchell has a great video for us today. It features Nana Bendov of YL Ventures, very well-known VC company, invests early stage Israeli companies for the most part, and then helps them grow and establish a U.S. presence. This is on YL Ventures CISO Quarterly Circuit Report. And so here now is Mitchell with Nana Bendov.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Well, I'm joined today by Nama Bendov, who is associate on the investment team at YL Ventures. YL Ventures is an Israeli-based seed investment investment firm that focuses on cybersecurity. Welcome, Nama.
Thank you, Mitch. Really happy to be here.
I managed
to be here again.
Again, yes, this is your second time. Well, though I stumbled trying to kind of get out a little bit about YL Ventures, why don't you tell us about yourself and also tell us about YL Ventures?
Yeah, happy to. So, Mitch, as you kindly mentioned, I'm Nama Bendov. I'm an associate at YL Ventures. YL is an Israel and US-based cybersecurity-focused seed stage venture capital firm. We invest in teams coming out of Israel. We're Israel's #1 cybersecurity-focused firm. And in it, I am part of the investment team, diligencing companies, always talking to the industry, trying to understand what's the next most exciting thing in cybersecurity. And in this framework, I have the opportunity to investigate really cool stuff, of which I'm hoping to chat about with you about.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. When we talked last time in April of this year, we were on a little different topic. You were on your 6th edition of this report. That was the 3rd. So you've been very busy. Excited to have you back. So tell us a little bit about the focus of this particular edition, the 6th edition of the CISO report.
Absolutely. So we noticed a phenomena, which I think will not sound very odd to most of our listeners here, the sprawling and increased use of SaaS applications and SaaS services across a variety of corporations, of companies, whether it's huge and very established and traditional companies, or whereas it's your small 15 people startup. So and anything within that scope has increasingly use their SaaS applications. And this begs the questions of how on earth would you secure SaaS applications, considering that an increasing amount of your data is actually being transferred there, and also considering that within every given enterprise or company, there's an increasing amount of SaaS applications. this has so much so come to the fore, especially given that a lot of companies have actually lost track of how many SaaS applications they have. And once you don't even know how much you have and where your data actually resides, the ability to sort of properly secure data that resides in your SaaS applications becomes increasingly difficult. So we thought it would be especially pertinent and interesting to double down on this issue. And for this, to this end, we went out to our advisory board, which consists of dozens of chief information security officers from a variety of companies, whether it's Netflix and Spotify and Google and Grubhub, and as well as more traditional companies such as Wells Fargo and Walmart. And we asked them, how are you dealing with this issue? Is this even an issue for you? And what do you see in the future coming out to the market? What would be what would your ideal SaaS security solution basically entail? And this report namely dives into several of these really fascinating questions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard organizations making decisions in days, a week or two, of what might have taken a year or more of what to choose for their collaboration tool or particular SaaS application. So there's apps that CISOs and others are involved in selecting. And of course, there's also the sort of the bottom part of the iceberg, the hidden part of this of all the SaaS apps that people maybe were already using or increasingly using that aren't visible to the CISO. And the days are long gone of what I don't know about, I don't have to worry about. It's your job to know about it and make sure that you're securing it as a CISO. Well, tell us, so what are some of the big findings from the report? Really curious.
So I think the number one interesting and I think unexpected finding as well was that the majority of respondents that we spoke with thought that the underlying way to solve a lot of the issues around security gaps in SaaS solutions would take place in the form of actually providing really comprehensive visibility into your entire SaaS landscape, right? So whereas many of them flag the ability to appropriately secure access to their SaaS environments, whether it's through proper authentication or proper authorization capabilities within your SaaS applications, or many of them have also flagged the ability to detect and respond to actual threats and attacks, so sort of imminent breaches that are occurring in their environments. Ultimately, they all agreed that the measure to take in order to secure that would be to provide visibility. And how on earth would we provide that? So I think a lot of entrepreneurs these days, and we're seeing increasing a number of entrepreneurs coming out with innovative solutions in this domain, are working hard at work in trying to build as many integrations as possible to existing SaaS solutions, which is incredibly hard. Why is it hard? This is given that a lot of SaaS solutions themselves don't really have appropriate APIs to be integrated with to begin with. So you got those big SaaS applications, whether it's G Suite, Office 365, or HubSpot and Salesforce, who have wonderful APIs that several companies integrate with, also outside the spectrum of cybersecurity. But when it comes to the long tail of SaaS, so for example, applications that are not as widely adopted as other SaaS applications, for example, Office 365 and the one that I mentioned previously, however, could potentially involve a lot of your very sensitive data, whether it's sort of financial transaction related data or personally identifiable data of other customers. So a lot of these forms of SaaS applications do not have appropriate or really robust APIs that you can integrate with. And in this situation, it's extremely hard to provide coverage for that long tail as well. So how do you do that? And I think in this report, I really tried calling out to not only security entrepreneurs to actually try to solve this problem by providing this visibility, but at the end of the day, it's also, it should potentially also be the responsibility of the SaaS vendors themselves. They should be the ones providing those robust APIs, and thus also increasing their share of the market by providing or enabling more and more solutions, whether it's security or other solutions, to integrate with them and to provide interoperability between them and the security world. So a lot of the responsibility of making sure that SaaS applications are appropriately secured also lies not only within the innovators in the cybersecurity world, but also with the SaaS applications themselves.
I don't know if you talk to the SaaS providers. What's your sense of their interest or willingness? There's always you'd always like to have volunteers instead of hostages, right? People that want to do something for you. Are they interested in providing this kind of information to companies to help sort of the discovery phase of what might be happening that in their service that contains their data, their users, those kinds of things?
So you definitely see extensive ability to provide this interoperability with the most widely adopted SaaS applications. The ones that the repeated players in almost every single large company, whether it's your G Suite, etc. So you do see this really extensive notion and willingness to be integrated into a variety of other solutions. And I think that at the end of the day, it all boils down to how we view the shared responsibility model. I think currently, I'll take a step back and first to our listeners who are not really familiar with this concept. So this refers to the model outlining where the responsibility of the security of the vendor of a certain infrastructure or data provider or vendor of any sort of IT service, where does it end? And where does the responsibility for the security actually start with the customer? And when it comes to the application, the shared responsibility model, specifically with respect to SaaS applications, you see that there is this industry default of making sure the burden is more on the side of the customer, right? So whereas the native security capabilities with a lot of SaaS applications, they do exist. Some of them have those APIs which enable to integrate with other security solutions. There's this default mode of providing those applications with very limited security configurations or with very limited security capabilities for some of them. And then I think, or at least what we heard of from our respondents was that potentially this burden should be shifted such that very basic security capabilities, which are currently not being provided by the SaaS applications, could come to the market with those capabilities already integrated into them. So I think that's sort of the I wouldn't say tension, but for the conflict or sort of the phenomena of change that we've at least received in our responses.
It sounds like it might be one of those things that, as you mentioned, the more common, the leaders invest in those kinds of APIs or information, and maybe the industry comes along with it as it becomes more of an expected requirement for folks. Really good. I'm sure the sprawl has been tremendous. Any insights on how it's grown over, kind of since COVID, that sort of the period? Was there any sense of that from your folks that you surveyed?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think obviously COVID has had a massive increase or massive sort of, it's been a catalyst to adopting of SaaS security solutions or SaaS solutions as a whole, especially considering that remote workers currently rely on cloud-based workspaces and work tools in order to basically deliver and being able to manage their workloads. And we're seeing that over 50%, so to be more precise, 61% of our respondents have over 50 SaaS security solutions that they know of, right? So we have not had a single respondent telling us, hey, listen, there is an X amount of, I have visibility into my entire SaaS landscape, right? So the numbers I just referred to pertain to everything that you know. All of them have mentioned and highlighted the amount of work that goes around into finding what they refer to as unknown unknowns, right? So for example, SaaS solutions that a certain developer, GitHub environments that certain developers just happen to, pop up, or all sorts of, for example, sort of time management or product management SaaS applications that the product management teams or the sales teams just also lifted either using their personal accounts or their company accounts. So naturally, I think when it comes to a lot of industry phenomena, especially in the SaaS world, the remote work situation expedited a phenomena that would already existed, right? So SaaS data was increasingly anyways moving more and more towards SaaS and more towards distributed SaaS environments. But now that employees and companies had to ultimately adapt to this new reality really quickly, this just accelerated this move even more.
I'm curious, what were some of the biggest concerns that they had? Was it just that it's sort of out of sight, the unknown unknowns, or it was more specific issues, things like, access control, identity management, data loss, data theft, those kinds of things, intellectual property? What were sort of top of mind to the CISOs?
So I think you have the answer embedded within your question, or at least within.
Well, lucky
yeah.
then.
Yes, exactly. It's I'm just going to go now because you just answered. But what ultimately we heard from our advisors boiled down to, yes, first of all, understanding your unknown unknowns, but also secondly, understanding how to better manage and enforce identity and access within those environments. So in a reality and in a situation where, your corporation or whatever organization you work with doesn't have this sort of closed perimeter architecture anymore, right? You don't just have sort of physical a corporate network, which you come in and out of. Identity and the ability to enforce identity policies are namely the only ability you have to secure who goes in and out of your corporate environment, whatever that means now, because these environments are often really ephemeral. So to that end, how do you provide proper authentication mechanisms? So in this respect, for example, time and again, we've heard from our advisors how much 100% of them have SSO implemented, right? It is a baseline cybersecurity capability in SaaS environments, and it has often been conveyed as so. And then, going back to the shared responsibility model and how we view it and how we should be viewing it in the future, it has often been odd upon that some SaaS vendors don't provide that as a basic security capabilities. Several advisors have talked about what's called in the industry as an SSO tax, namely referring to the need to pay a certain premium or certain extra on top of your existing subscription payments in order to even provide this SSO capability, which is in fact, de facto in the security industry viewed as a baseline capability, which should be integrated into your usual package, subscription package. So even when you look at authorization capabilities within SaaS environments, right? How do you provide as granular as possible authorization once you're already in the SaaS applications, right? How do you provide sort of file level provisioning or application level within SaaS security, within the SaaS vendor itself provisioning? And another concern which they've voiced pertains to actually detection and response capability. Because SaaS has been so widely implemented within organizations in recent years, we're actually seeing that there's a lot of malicious actors who developed a domain expertise specifically with respect to account takeovers or anything to do with sort of taking over maliciously your SaaS environment. And this requires specific domain expertise into how to deal with said SaaS threats. So this actually recently emerged as a new domain called Cloud Detection and Response, which refers to a set of products and capabilities which have this expertise into understanding how to deal with said takeovers. So I think these three, so namely visibility into your SaaS environments, as well as identity and access management and detection and response, have been the most voiced over concerns.
It's interesting, just my own experience as a CIO. We used to talk about shadow IT a lot, not so much anymore because I think it's just a fact of life. But it was always the things you knew people would come to IT for was when they need tied into the directory as for SSO or directory, a single account, access to data that you might have. Access to applications because they want to tie into some kind. So there's sort of points in time where if you need to do more, you need to do the next thing. That's oftentimes you'll get someone reaching out to IT or to security to request help or using that. I'm curious if, now those are just sort of pragmatic things that I learned, running IT organizations. Are there some interesting things in the pipeline or ideas that entrepreneurs are thinking about how to solve this problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So you do see entrepreneurs that have come across in the past, almost 4 years that are trying to innovate in this domain, which used to be dominated by CASB solutions. A lot of them are either—
CASB for us.
Oh, CASB. Cloud Access Security Brokers. When SaaS applications first emerged into the market, CASBs were the first generations of security products which secured SaaS environments, both by trying to provide this visibility into SaaS environments, but also to prevent data leakages from your applications. Having said that, if we're already on the topic of CASBs, I'll just mention that a lot of our respondents are looking for innovative solutions to replace them in a reality where CASBs are often really cumbersome, both to deploy and cumbersome to manage. Often their proxy architectures create a sort of bottleneck when it comes to getting data to and from the application. And a lot of CASBs that actually sort of enforced a lot of policies created performance issues from data that is stored inside the CASB, the SaaS application itself. So you see a lot of sort of next generation SaaS security products either trying to deal with the world of either identity management or providing security before, sort of the infrastructure of the security before the actual attacks and threats occur. And then on the other hand of the spectrum, you'll see companies that are more focusing on the component of what to do when there's an actual attack within your environments, right? You'll also see companies that are trying to sort of emerging from the SaaS management space, right? Into SaaS security. So for example, companies like Better Cloud, which actually originally was not primarily in the security space, but managed to provide a lot of integrations and a lot into several SaaS environments, hence giving them sort of a competitive advantage over a lot of other companies, most of which deal with or have integrations to the biggest SaaS environments, or just the top 5 or 6 or 7 SaaS environments.
Interesting. Well, where can folks get a hold of this report?
They can very easily go to wildventures.com and look for the CISO Circuit. That's the name of our quarterly reports. And you can find it basically in every single social media outlet that YL Ventures has, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Instagram. We're also on Instagram. And I'm happy to get reached out to for any questions you might have. You can find me easily on LinkedIn, Nama Ben-Dov. And these are the major outlets we have for this.
Cool. If you don't find it, just follow
Yes.
YL Ventures, and it'll eventually come to you. Any insights or anything you can share about the 7th edition of what you may be focusing on? Has that been decided yet, where you're going next?
Yeah, that's a good question. So actually, a lot of it has been inspired by the responses we got from the report I just talked to about. So it's going to revolve the sort of the general world of identity and access management, not just in the framework of SaaS, where in the framework of cloud entities as a whole, and maybe even non-cloud entities. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, there's a core to every security organization's architecture, right? Starting with identity management and access control. Well, super interesting. I appreciate you joining us, and I hope you come back a little more quickly. We'll invite you back to get maybe a readout on the next report or two and see what you've learned. And it's been a pleasure talking with you again, Nama.
Yeah, I always love being here, Mitch. I mean, always. Second time. Really happy to have chatted with you, even if it was just before the show. So thank you for being here.
Very nice. Very good talking with you. Be sure and check out. We've got some great information, other great information, and I really appreciate YL Ventures. Yeah, as well as being an investment organization, sharing the research with the community. So that's, I think that's super helpful, and we appreciate you thinking more broadly about sharing what you're learning, as opposed to kind of keeping that close to the vest. It's great that you're doing that.
Thanks, Mitch. It's a huge part of our sort of mantra and the way we see our contribution to the industry.
Good stuff, Mitchell, and congratulations to YL Ventures. Yov and the team there, I've known them a long time since they've started. It's good to see the growth. They've also had a tremendous amount of success, so congratulations to them. But that's going to call a wrap, I think, on today's show. What a way to start the week on Monday. We'll be back tomorrow with more great content. I hope to see you then. But do be careful out there, guys. It's a tough time. Be safe, be well, be strong. TechStrong. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.